What's up, everyone? Welcome to this video. We are going to talk a little bit about goal setting, how to set goals, right? So you probably came in here with some specific goals, outcomes that you want, right? So maybe some of you are coming in here with a New Year's resolution, that type of a goal, maybe in a year you want to be able to draw faces or something like that. That might be the goal that you're coming in with. But let's talk a little bit about setting goals that are actually productive. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I've set a lot of goals through my life and failed at almost all of them. And then I realized that the way I was setting goals was wrong. Now, the big difference, the big concept that I want you to take away is outcome versus input goals, right? So, output goals is what you're getting out at the end of the journey, and input goals is what you're putting into the journey. Now, the reason why output goals, outcome goals are so difficult to deal with, I think, emotionally, is because you only win at the end. You only win once you actually achieve the thing. And that might create some motivation initially, but it's hard to hold on to that motivation because it's hard to really enjoy the process of it. Now, an input goal, for example, so let me explain the difference between the two. An outcome goal would be like, well, I want to be able to draw faces by the end of the year, right? That is, you're getting to an outcome. There's a destination that you're trying to get to, right? While an input goal is more like, I want to draw for 20 minutes a week, or I want to draw for 60 minutes a week, which means if that's an input goal or how much time I'm putting into actually drawing, what happens with this one, the input goal, is that you win every time you draw, right? Well, if you're trying to get to being able to draw faces, every time you draw a face that's not good enough by your standards, you will feel like you're failing, right? Now, for some people, depending on your personality type, that might be the type of goal that works best for you. If you have a history of these types of goals working for you, fine, go down that path. I'm not going to tell you what works best for you, but what I've experienced personally, what I've seen with a lot of students, is that input goals are so much better in terms of the experience that you have emotionally with yourself. So, if I can sit down for 20 minutes and win in my mind, win at my goal, I'm much more likely to spend more time drawing because I'm winning every time I draw, you know? And then you actually get to the places that you want to be. But instead of it being a destination, it's almost like you're really focused on the journey. And I know that's a bit of a cliche. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. You know what I mean? Like, because it works. That is why it's become a cliche. It's because there aren't better words for it. That is why it's a cliche, you know? So what I want you to think of is that it's totally fine if you came in with an outcome goal. Obviously, outcome goals is what most people come with. That is what gets a lot of people started, and it sets a path. It's good that you set a goal for yourself, right? Setting a path is good. I'm not telling you to like throw out all your outcome goals. That's not what I'm saying. Is that it's a good starting point to have an outcome goal. That is how I got started in drawing. That's how most people get started with anything, right? People go to the gym because they want to get to a certain level of fitness. It's a good starting point, right? Because it gives you a path forwards. Like you're like, this is where I want to go. Now I know where I'm headed. But now that you know where you're headed, now let's change the goal into something that is input oriented rather than outcome oriented, right? So let's try to focus on how many minutes of drawing do you think you can do per week realistically? Be honest with yourself. Obviously, if you're on a break right now, maybe you're on vacation, you can draw more, but you want to set your goals so that it's realistic for the lifestyle that you have, right? Like maybe you are a parent and you don't have that much time. Maybe you only have 20 minutes on a Saturday morning because, that's the only time the family's not in your business, right? Then set that as your goal to 20 minutes. That means that every single week you can win at your goal as long as you just get that 20 minutes, right? And that's worth fighting for. While an outcome goal, like trying to fit, no, like trying to be able to draw faces by the end of the year, is so far in the future and it's so hard to know if you're headed that way, right? That it's not helpful. At least in my experience, has not been helpful. Now you got to know your personality, what works best for you, what is your history. If you have set a lot of goals in your life and you haven't hit them, I really recommend switching to input goals so that you can win along the way. The last thing I want to talk about is be forgiving with yourself, even if you have a specific goal in mind. Even if you're like, well, I'm only trying to draw 20 minutes a week and you miss a week, be forgiving with yourself. Life is complicated. There's so many things that are going on at all times. You're not going to be able to predict the future. So when you set the goal and when you're actually trying to achieve the goal, that's a very different experience. So be forgiving with yourself. There's no, you're not going to get extra points for feeling tons of shame and judging yourself for missing your goal. If you miss your goal, right? Like if you fall short of what you're expecting of yourself, acknowledge that you could do better maybe. Like maybe you can acknowledge that, hey, maybe I was a little bit lazy. Maybe I watched TV instead of drawing. Acknowledge it, but don't feel tons of shame about it. You don't need to feel that kind of negative emotion to make a change in your behavior. You can change your behavior just by acknowledging it. You can be like, hey, this week I did this, which is fine, but let's try to change that next week. And you can do all of that in your mind without feeling tons of negative emotion. You can just accept it, be forgiving with yourself. You are human, right? You are gonna make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. That's just how it is, you know? So try to talk to yourself like your friend would talk to you, right? And if you really struggle with this, what I recommend doing is if you do have a phone and you have a voice recorder on your phone, if you have an iPhone, it comes pre-installed. It's a voice notes, I think, voice recorder or something. You look it up. You can just record yourself talking to yourself. So be like, dear, whatever your name is, and just start talking to yourself. Be like, hey, you missed your goal this week. That's completely fine. Here are the things that you could have done better. Let's do this better next week. And then listen back to yourself and just hear yourself say it and be like, yep, this is a friend of mine. I am a friend to me. So try to treat yourself kindly, right? I understand. And I'm mentioning all this stuff up front because I know how much pressure people put on themselves, especially beginner artists, because it's like you're so excited to get into it, but at the same time, you're so nervous. And there's like so many emotions running through your mind. Like maybe you wanted to learn how to draw like many years ago. So you like judge yourself for that. There's all these like different feelings that are layered on top of each other that we're just gonna like let go of all that and be like, hey, I'm a friend to myself. I'm gonna be forgiving. I'm gonna try to enjoy it. Because I do think that the joy of drawing is the number one goal, right? Even if you don't get a lot of the technical stuff, if you learn how to enjoy the drawing process, then we won, right? That is the real winning. Okay. So that's all I'm gonna say about goal setting. Hopefully this makes sense to you. Try to set input goals versus output goals, right? We will, in the one of the next sections, we're going to get a little bit into the specifics of like what goals to aim for. But if you have like minutes in mind that you can hit, you're like, hey, an hour a week, I can do an hour a week, 30 minutes on this day and 30 minutes on this day, or 20 minutes every day. You know, that's a good position to be in. If you're in a place where you can draw 20 minutes every single day, you will make good progress because that is peak. But I know that most people, that's not the situation that most people probably are in. Most people are in a situation where it's very, fluid. Your schedule is not that strict, or maybe you're like someone who's has a lot of responsibilities in your life, and 20 minutes a day is just not realistic. Figure out what's realistic for you, set your goals around that, and then, yeah, we'll get into drawing. I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next video. So thank you so much. See you guys again soon. Keep this in mind, okay? As we go through the course. Feel free to revisit this video, by the way. As you go through the course, you might forget some of this stuff and come back to the intro, remind yourself of what actually matters. The video you just watched is part of my beginner drawing course. In the full course, we will learn some of the very basic concepts within drawing, then use those skills to draw faces and bodies, all while having tons of fun. The course includes over 14 hours of video content, real-time voiceover videos, 35 lesson videos, and pages with tutorial images, and 35 printable reference sheets to help us practice. I'd be honored to be your art companion through this journey, so let's draw together. Link is in the description. See you over there. Bye.